Klaus says, together with the United Nations, the IMF, Bill Gates and Microsoft, BP, and other companies, we're going to initiate a reset. Where have we heard of the idea of a reset? If you study the French Revolution, then you know that they had this idea that they could do a reset where when they destroyed all the existing culture of France, they could erect a new society. And by the new society, they don't just mean a better running system. They're talking about everything else that you had going away. Now you understand why they get rid of landmarks and monuments. All of that has to wipe away. It's a reset. It's a delete on your history, on your tradition, on your heritage. All that goes away. That's the delete button. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host for this final hour, Jay Dyer of jaysanalysis.com. And since Alex and Paul Joseph Watson did a really great interview yesterday covering what Klaus Schwab of the Davos World Economic Forum cabal has been saying lately, I thought we could do a little bit of rehearsal, right? We would get back into what Klaus said and also touch on some of the other statements from the World Economic Forum. Let's talk about the video that they put out first, because this really encapsulates everything in one brief clip. I don't know if you guys have that ready, but if we walk through this video, if we can pull that up, what we're going to see is 8 points that they laid out back in 2016. And these 8 points are going to show every single thing that will be the New World Order in essence. That is the technocracy in full play, all laid out in this 2-minute video that, by the way, went viral in the last few days. And then the World Economic Forum deleted this clip. So the first thing that they mentioned, if we can pull that up in this video, is, if not, I can look at my copy of it. It starts out by saying that the U.S. will not be an economic superpower, right? So the U.S. is going to decline. The U.S. is going to experience possibly some sort of reintegration into a global federation, as Klaus himself says in his books. So remember, this is the head of the World Economic Forum, Davos. Klaus Schwab is the guy behind this whole project here, and he works with the top elites. Remember, we've looked at Davos for many years. The elites that go to Davos, very similar to more of a public version of Bilderberg, that kind of a thing. But you'll notice that right away they said we've got to target the U.S. The U.S. has to be destroyed, has to decline. And then he ultimately says be reintegrated into some form of global federation. The next point he says is that there will be a handful of countries that will dominate. You will now be subject to some group of countries that they select, right? Presumably China and other countries. I think it was Kissinger that said that China is the future, the Chinese century, according to the globalists, right? So that's what you're going to submit to. The UN, together with China, together with the IMF, together with the World Economic Forum, they're all going to come together and decide what the global policies will be. And of course, those countries are themselves fronts for bigger families and bigger operations that have been subverting those countries for a long time, all the way back to the OSS. If you read Bill Donovan, if you look at the declassified documents of the CIA, how the OSS went and trained Mao's guerrillas, and they set up the present-day communist system. That was done by the Rockefeller decision. That was not done by organic communist revolutionaries on the ground, right? The next point that they make that you may have forgotten about, but we haven't forgotten about it because I cover all these global elite books, is diet. A long, long time ago, Plato said that diet is one of the things that you have to attack. You have to attack people's food supply, because that's a basic function of energy in the economy, right? In society, is people eating to do the slave labor that they're going to do, and they don't want you to be healthy and fit. And of course, the most nutrient optimal diet for a human being is meat and meat fats. And so they want to, first and foremost, get rid of meat. Why do you think so many of these global elitists in the last 2 years have poured billions of dollars into veganism, into the vegan cult, into banning meat, into fake meat, into making poop meat? I'm not joking, by the way. That's a Bill Gates project. He actually wants you to eat you know what, literally. And so you've got all these other elitists that want to reorganize the human diet, and we'll see why that's so important in Klaus's book here in a minute. But that's why the Fortune 100, especially the food companies, and by the way, remember there's a couple companies that control like 90% of food distribution now, like 4 or 5 major corporations that control all food. And so you have to understand that that's a key way to attack the population, to dumb them down and to make them weak, as Plato said many centuries ago in the Republic. I want to remind you to be sure and support InfoWars, buy their supplements, go to the InfoWars store, and we'll be back in just a second. I'm Jay Dyer. This is the Alex Jones Show. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer, jaysanalysis.com. Be sure and follow me on my social media outlets while I'm still there. And then you can check me out on Parler as well. We were talking about Klaus Schwab, Davos, World Economic Forum, and them basically uncloaking, right? Just like Hydra, if you watched, the Marvel series more recently with the Avengers and Captain America, that Hydra was like this shady institution that was international, that was planning all these kinds of depopulation operations and surveillance, and putting into place AI that would basically run the planet. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about Spectre that's real, right? Imagine James Bond. He's fighting Spectre all these years, but in reality, James Bond works for Spectre, okay? James Bond is the agent of Spectre, and that's what we're looking at here. Is you could look at the World Economic Forum, Davos, literally like Spectre. If you saw the actual recent Bond film Spectre from a few years ago, you remember there's that scene where they're all sitting in some place in Rome, and it's like this darkly lit room of this big palace that they're sitting in or whatever, and they're reading over like the recent reports from black markets, and it's like, Mr. Blofeld, we've got 23 million people trafficked in human trafficking operations. We're up 5% from last year. Yes, sir, we've got 75 million added in bonus drug trafficking, blah, blah, blah. So they just go through all these stats about the black markets. And that's what we're talking about here, is literally a gigantic secret octopus that runs all of this stuff. And their goal, and there you go, exactly. That's the perfect analogy to Klaus Schwab, right? And so their plan is now fully in the open. It's not a conspiracy. It's not a theory. It's all plain and open. By the way, they deleted this tweet, this sequence of claims in this video, this plans that we're talking about. They deleted this, and the reason they deleted it is because it went viral. Somebody dug this up from the 2016 clip from the World Economic Forum. It literally says, and by the way, it's not just, oh, maybe it'll be like this in the tech utopia when we bring in this utopia. No. This is a plan, right? And they're already implementing this now. And it's not a utopia, it's a dystopia. The next thing they say is that you're going to have to do a better job at experiencing open borders and reintegration of foreign populations. Now, this is an older technique of economic and social warfare, right? Where you use migrant populations. There's a whole book. There's actually War College, Pentagon books on this. Kelly Greenhill wrote a book called Weapons of Mass Migration. It's a well-known strategy. It's an ancient technique of warfare, where you can flood a people group, an existing people group, with foreign people groups to disrupt the economy. And one easy way to see that disruption is the stresses that it puts on the existing welfare system. But now you can see why Cloward and Piven, this kind of stuff, the model is to have more and more welfare. And then that puts a strain on the taxation, the population, then feeding into the new in-moving population, the migrant population. It's a form of warfare, and that's why you see, people like Erdogan threatening to send migrants into countries that don't, for example, do what he wants to do. So what you're seeing here is the elite themselves saying that it's a full spectrum plan. It's every area of life. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's the elite themselves saying it's a full spectrum plan openly. 1 million plus people watch this video. Time magazine has a cover right now, The Great Reset. And you've got half of the population thinks this is a conspiracy theory. They think this is crazy. Well, it's not going to be crazy when Klaus gets his way and when you start to see the things that Klaus talks about. We're seeing it now. Right? Klaus talked about shaping the future and the revolution that we're going through right now 2 or 3 years ago in this book. And then he wrote a book recently on COVID. He says COVID is the perfect thing to bring in what we want. It's the Great Reset. It's the catalyst for the Great Reset. Now, what's the Great Reset? Well, let's go back to our series of slides here from this video. The next thing they talk about is polluters. What do they mean by polluters? Well, they're talking about the existing American economy, right? They're not talking about pollution in other countries. And they're not even talking about pollution. They're talking about, quote, carbon, right? Which is basic life forms. In other words, remember, every time you see the carbon tax, that's a tax on life. That's what it actually means. So taxing life, you're gonna have to pay a life tax to the international elite, to the bankers. And this also is an attack on the economy, right? It's an attack on the existing structure, the existing economy to weaken the US so that it can be integrated into this global power structure. And that's what so many of these leftists and so many of these the control freaks, the students out on the streets, the 50 million Americans who think that they're going to get all this free crap. It's not free crap, and it's slavery. And it's always been the case that, yeah, you can have theoretically a local welfare system, but when the centralized federal government tries to have welfare for the entire country, right, since what LBJ's Great Society Project, and now there's going to be a global welfare system that they're calling a credit system, the social credit score, the universal basic income. All the tech elites are saying this. This is insane. And in fact, Klaus even says in this book that they're going to make sure that when they lock down all natural resources, including water, they're going to say, they're saying, we're going to ration it to you, you see, based on a new set of values, which he calls the new covenant. I'm not joking. That's what he says in his book. He says it's a new religious covenant. He doesn't use the word religion, but what is a covenant? It's religious. It's from the Bible. This new covenant will have an AI system that will ration to everyone what they think is the fair amount of water, what's the fair amount of resources. And that's why, as we'll see in a minute, he says that you're not going to own anything. And this is not just him. This is some of the wealthiest people on the planet talking about just basic bitch communism, right? Now, they're not communists. They have yachts, they have palaces, they have underground fortresses like, Blofeld or, Bond villains. No, this is for you. This is for everyone else, right? You're not going to get the transhumanist stuff. You're not going to get the tech. Now, this is for them and their family and their elite groups. And that's why it's so sickening is the hypocrisy of these people, right? To openly own, palaces, yachts, private jets, basically these corporations have their own GDP above many small countries, right? But they want to enforce this communistic type of system for the masses. And on top of this communistic layer for the masses, there's a fascistic system of technocratic control, right? So you've got a sort of quasi-fascist system of the technocracy that's in a public-private partnership with the corporations, the Fortune 100, enforcing a communistic, egalitarian so-called system below that, where everybody gets a fair and equal redistribution of resources and what's based on need, right? What was Marx's famous, dictum about whatever, to each his own, right? Based on your needs. And then above that is the elite themselves. So you've got this basic pyramidal structure of a not bound by any laws crop of billionaires and more elites up here. The fascistic system of the tech control here in the middle that pretends to be in place like it's liberal and all this nonsense. And then the sort of communistic shared economy for everybody down below. That's almost like Plato's pyramid, except that the middle structure of Plato's pyramid was at least guardian class warriors, right? They were at least had some sort of noble courage. But for the masses, everything had to be kind of, completely controlled and totally under a technocratic idea. But if we look back at the list here from the WEF, the next thing they say is that, and this was an odd one that they threw in there, and this could speak to where the next phase of this program goes in the next 5 or 10 years. It's entirely possible that they could come up with some alien mythology, some alien nonsense, right? Where they're going to say, "Oh yes, we were seeded here by space visitors and all this nonsense," and that's the new mythology, right? The new religion, something new agey Darwin alien or something. That's what Klaus is talking about here. Scientists will have worked out a way to keep you healthy in space. Oh, you're going to fly around like Kirk and Spock in space. It's going to be utopia, right? Maybe we'll find aliens. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer. On this fourth hour, we were talking about the list in the sequence of World Economic Forum plans. The next in this list was the perhaps discovery of alien life, and that humans perhaps were seeded, right, by aliens. It's called panspermia, and many of the scientific elite for a long time have been obsessed with this idea. Many of them have even written white paper reports. There was a 1960s Brookings Institute paper that said if we promote the idea of alien life and that's the origin of perhaps humanity, then we can replace the Christian biblical values of the West. That's literally what the paper says. And so they know from a psychological warfare standpoint that you can manipulate the mass mind and the belief systems, their worldview, with these kinds of plans, with these kinds of projects. In fact, I just tweeted out a couple days ago a declassified document about the CIA using religious warfare to manipulate worldviews. Right? So using doctrines, using religious ideas, twisting them, basically playing on divisive areas of different religious states and nations to split the countries, to divide. And I think that's what we're seeing here. If you look at, for example, the Roman Catholic Church, what is happening in the Roman Catholic Church with the letters that Vigano and other people have been writing to Trump, you're seeing a split down the middle over this controversial, radical statements of Pope Francis, who obviously aligns with Klaus and all the rest of the globalists, right? And so the goal there is split that group down the middle, right? The Roman Catholic Church down the middle. The Orthodox Church is the same situation going on, split it down the middle, especially over the drama in the Ukraine, the CIA supporting that schism in the Ukraine. So the Orthodox Church then is to be split down the middle. And what's happening in the U.S., the Democrats, the radicals that are involved in this coup that they've been talking about for months and months and months. They said they would do a coup, and here they are doing it. They're splitting the U.S. down the middle. They want to divide it. They want to get everybody at each other's throats. And so this method is very useful. It's classic, right? This dividing. I'm not just saying divide and conquer. It's more sophisticated than that, because it's not just divide and get everybody at each other's throats. It's also about the reintegration into the bigger global technocratic picture. And that's why the next in Klaus's list here from the Economic Forum is point 8, Western values will have to be tested to the breaking point. Tested to the breaking point? In other words, we want to break it. We're going to break the West, right? And if you know the mindset of the global elite, that's what he means there. I guarantee you that's what they're talking about. They're not just saying, oh, we're going to test it to see if it works. And if it works, we'll let it continue. No. Break it. Break it. And so they're saying the existing system. And that's what, if you saw, in fact, there was a recent podcast that Klaus himself did with none other than Prince Charles. Klaus and Prince Charles, they're doing their own little podcast together, right? Imagine the Prince of England, right? Oh, let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast, Klaus, and let's talk about how to kill everyone, right? That's what they're doing, right? And Klaus says, yes, we're going to kill them all. In this podcast, they talk about the fact that the existing system of the world, capitalism as we know it, has to go away. It doesn't work. And there's a lot of people who have criticisms of monopolistic capitalism, of finance capitalism and all that. And you can have those criticisms, but here's my problem. I had a liberal friend of mine from a long-time liberal friend the other day. He was arguing with me. He says, He says, you don't like these elites that run things right now. They're rich. Aren't you going to be happy when their system goes away? And I said, don't you understand? They're not bringing in a nice, better system, right? For all the problems in the existing system, what they're bringing in is going to be 10 times worse. That's what I'm trying to tell you, right? This is not going to be good for 99% of the people. This is going to be good for 0.0001% of the elite, the 6,000 managerial class that Rothkopf talked about, who work underneath these global elitists. That's who it's going to be good for. And that's what Klaus is talking about. He says this system, these ideas that create middle class wealth and energy, that's got to go away. And we can't put our system into place, which is a top-down control system under the cloak of liberalism and democracy. We can't put that into place until we get rid of this largely energized middle class, right? That has to go away. Now, I'm not saying that everything about the middle class is perfect. I'm just saying that for them to bring in the next phase, the previous phase has to die. And that's what their whole podcast was about. Their whole podcast was, him and Prince Charles, was, look, we need a reset because the existing system has problems. And what they'll do is hype all the problems in the existing system, many of which they create and promote. They like the problems, the chaos, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Arc of crisis, according to Brzezinski. They love the crises so that they can point to the crises and say, look at how bad you are. Look at all of your overconsumption. Look at all of you people having kids, eating meat. Don't you feel guilty? Right? It's a guilt manipulation tactic. And then they say, we're going to fix that for you. We're going to help you out because we love you, even though we want to kill everybody. We love you still, right? We're going to put in a system that's fair. You remember when all the COVID stuff started? What did Bill Gates say in all of his interviews? We want to bring in a system that's fair. We're going to fairly distribute billions of dollars. This guy has billions of dollars. Is he going to fairly distribute any of those billions to you? No, of course not. He's talking about you, the upper middle class, the wealthy class. He's talking about taking their money and redistributing it, taking your tax money and redistributing it. It's such an obvious scam. And it's amazing to me how many people, especially boomers, all these boomers that voted for Biden, that are falling for this. Right? Well, he's going to give me, I'm going to get my free stuff. I'm going to get my medicines. I'm going to get my meds. No, it's Trump that was actually working to get you your meds, right? A boomer's on like 20 different meds. You go to a boomer's medicine counter, they got like 50 meds up there, right? No, you want all those meds? Wasn't it Trump that was working to get those medicines for you for a cheaper price? And you want to go under Biden, who says he wants to tank the entire Western economy by getting rid of oil? What? Are you crazy? What? I mean, it's mind-boggling, right? I mean, and Klaus says, together with the United Nations, the IMF, Bill Gates and Microsoft, BP, and other companies, we're going to initiate a reset. Where have we heard of the idea of a reset? If you study the French Revolution, then you know that they had this idea that they could do a reset where when they destroyed all the existing culture of France, they could erect a new society. And by the new society, they don't just mean a better running system. They're talking about everything else that you had going away. Now you understand why they get rid of landmarks and monuments. All of that has to wipe away. It's a reset. It's a delete on your history, on your tradition, on your heritage. All that goes away. That's the delete button. And then what do the French revolutionaries do? They instituted a new calendar because the calendar is religious, Christmas, Easter, this kind of stuff. They put in a new calendar of these weird made up holidays like Thermidor, atheist holidays. You can't make this up. Atheist holidays that are just made up names, Thermidor, what the heck is that? All right, this is Jay Dyer, Jay's Analysis. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis. If you'd like to support my work, you can subscribe there at my website, jaysanalysis.com. I do lectures. I do summaries and analysis of the writings of the elite. We've covered almost 45 or 50 of those in the last couple of years. So you can go get yourself a master's, PhD level education for $4.95 a month. You can't beat that, right? And there's no brainwashing. It doesn't come with any ponytailed, granola bar professor brainwashing. It comes just directly from the writings of the elite. And by the way, I wanted to let you know I had a few conversations in the last week with some leftists, with a former Hollywood person, a person who was a lead in a pretty big movie a couple of years ago. And he and I were going back and forth, and he said, "Man," he said, I'm starting to realize Hollywood's going away. It's like I don't have any more work." He says, "I think the work is drying up, and I've been turned on to your writings about Hollywood and your books, and so even Hollywood has been looking at esoteric Hollywood. So be sure and get a signed copy of my book, Esoteric Hollywood." And even some of the Hollywood people have been looking at that work. Was in a documentary a couple of years ago that Sean Stone did. That's really good, by the way. I'd recommend, with Oliver Stone, Sean Stone, other people. It's called Hollywood DC. So be sure and check that out if you've never seen it, because we were really working to try to expose this relationship of Hollywood as an organ of the deep state, right? But that's a different topic. Back to Klaus. What was Klaus saying in his number one? What was point number one in this? Point number one: you will own nothing and you'll be happy. In the sequences in the World Economic Forum video, you will own nothing and you're going to like it. Because Bill Gates said it's going to be a fair redistribution. He says that in the interviews. "Oh, we're going to make it fair. It's going to be fair. I'm going to have my African companies that will basically make me New Balance sneakers for the next 20 years. I'll have a monopoly on all the New Balance sneakers. I'll own Microsoft. I'll own everything. I'll own your soul, but it's going to be fair. I'm going to give you a ration. You're going to get a crap burger once a week. It's going to be delivered by an Amazon drone because I'm invested in crap burgers." Literally. You think that this is made up? Go look up Bill Gates and the fake food and Beyond Meat and using crap to make burgers. And if you think these people aren't satanic, just think about the weirdness, the sicko nature of making people eat their own refuse. And I think that they get off on that. I think Alex is 100% right when he says that that's a demonic attitude of really rubbing people's face in it. That's what this is about. And a lot of people have Stockholm syndrome. A lot of people like being tread upon. They like being a slave. They like being told that, you're going to lick the boots of Bill Gates and you're going to like it. And I'm not going to do that. I would just rather die than do that. I mean, and I think a lot of people feel that way too. They would rather not live a life that's just in total servitude to technocrats. Give me a break. I don't want to live that kind of a life. So I think most of you out there don't want to live that kind of life. And that's why we're talking about this today, is that you have to understand that there are evil people in the world. There are people who are raised even to be in these positions, and they're actually trained, believe it or not, to be evil. There's a section in Quigley's book, Tragedy and Hope, the famous book, where he says that the elite have the tendency to send their children off to boarding schools so that they don't develop an attachment to their mother. And the reason they do that is to make sure that they don't have any sense of empathy. So you're talking about an elite degenerate class that is trained to not have empathy. They see that as a weakness. They see that as I don't know why they would see. If you look at evolution, right, if you believe in evolutionary theory, then the trait of empathy, right, shouldn't that be part of the naturalistic deterministic process? All of the processes are naturalistic deterministic processes. So I don't know why one trait, right, it would be somehow weakness. I would think that the traits that we have would be, supposedly there for the purpose of the survival of the fittest. But I presume they think that, oh, no, it's psychopathy, right? Psychopathy is the trait that would actually further the species, because if you are willing to kill everybody else, then you're going to go into the future. Oh, wait a minute, but if you kill everybody else, you don't have a species. So actually, psychopathy is not advantageous to the species. The protection of the other members of the species is what's advantageous to the species, you see. So even if you're not a theist, even if you believe in just a sort of a naturalistic process, it still doesn't make sense to have a cancerous group of people in charge of the species. And that's literally what they say they want to be, right? Bertrand Russell Jonas Salk. They wrote entire books, Survival of the Wisest, Scientific Outlook, saying the scientific priest class, AKA the scientific priest class that's owned by the banking class, has to step up and commandeer and control evolution. And the way that we do that is to institute mandatory death panels, death care, euthanasia, Malthusianism, right? All of the plans that you've heard InfoWars Alex talking about for 20 years. So this last point that Klaus makes in his book and in this series of slides from this video is that you're not going to own anything because it's going to be what they call a circular economy. Now, Klaus talks about this in his book. He says that the circular economy is one in which this mistaken notion of owning property and private property, or the right of owning property, is gone. And the way that they're going to do that is to make you feel guilty, right? You've hurt Mother Earth because you have a car, because you have a house, because you have children. You're a danger, you're a cancer to Mother Earth. And so inculcate the guilt, the false guilt, right? And by the way, when people leave the belief in God, they don't get rid of theism. They just adopt a new God. And the elite know this. They know that when you move a population into atheistic views, they will replace it with new types of deities and new idols, and you can manipulate their guilt mechanism in this new system that you've put in place. So remember, you haven't done away with religion. Now you have an eco-religion, which tells you that you're guilty, not because of sin. The new sin is ecocide, right? Hurting the planet, overconsumption. And that's what Klaus says. Klaus says, this is the new covenant. He calls it a new covenant in the book. The new covenant of morals is one in which you're guilty for these types of things. See yourself as guilty. He says, inculcate totally new values for the entire world, and especially the West. The West especially has to be targeted, right? Because the West has been such an engine of economic, technological progress. Now the elites say, take that away, remove that, get rid of it, transfer it to us, and let them collapse and integrate into a big global federation run by, basically Eurasia, that the elite will put in power, right? It's not the Chinese people that we're, opposed to or anything like that. It's the elite who are put into power by this specter-like cabal, right? This international group of the Fortune 100 and their controllers. So that's what we're talking about here, is a circular economy. There's TED Talks, go look it up. TED Talks, thousands, millions of views on these TED Talks about how the way that we exist presently will have to die because it's killing the planet. The whole of society will be reorganized. Everything. It's all going away. It's all dying. So the way that you think of things, this is what these people say, is that you're working in the old model. You're in the Enlightenment centuries old model of how things are going to work. It's time for the next revolution. What's the next revolution? It's what Aldous Huxley called the final revolution, the end of man, the post-human revolution. You think that, how does that relate to Trump and all this stuff? It relates directly to the election because they said that the Great Reset can be brought in through this lockdown. That's what this is. It's not a conspiracy theory. They wrote books on it openly years ago, right? This is Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis. Be sure and support InfoWars in the InfoWars store, and be sure and support me at jaysanalysis.com. And we will be back in just a second to talk a little bit more about what's in Klaus's book and maybe what they have in the next phase if we don't stop this. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer of jaysanalysis.com. You can find me on all the social media outlets, YouTube as well, under my name, Jay Dyer. We're talking about Klaus, we're talking about the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. We are talking about the exposure of the Great Reset and stopping this ridiculous, inane plan of austerity, shutdown, and neo-feudalism. The last thing that we said there was, number one, you're not going to own anything. Bill Gates and Klaus are going to own everything, but don't worry, dude, it's going to be okay. He's going to fairly distribute the wealth. Why are you being such a conspiracy theorist, bro? Don't you think he's going to be fair? I mean, he gave you all those computers with all that malware, right? He wouldn't lie. He wouldn't be unfair. Let's talk about Klaus's book. A little bit of a refresher. Now, we did a video on this a couple months ago, and 3 months ago, I think. And this is what Alex was talking about yesterday in his show with Paul Joseph Watson. Now, when we covered this book, that video got, I don't know, 40,000 views. I mean, why aren't we getting this out? Right? People, share that video, share this video. I want this is designed to be a lecture, a rundown, right, of understanding and comprehending and working against this idea of Great Reset. So please share this video. Please support what we're doing here. We're trying to get this message out. And again, the mainstream media outlets are not going to cover this. In fact, again, they deleted that tweet from 2016 with the 8-point plan of bringing in technocratic communism. Now, why did they delete that? Because everybody was calling attention to it. It went viral. It got a million plus views. So they deleted it. Well, Klaus still tweets about it. He just tweeted the other day. He said, buy my COVID book for, what do you call it? Wintermas, not Christmas. Wintermas, you see. They don't like Jesus. They hate Christianity. They hate religion, right? The global reset prepares us for transhumanism, right? Go watch that video. I'm detailing it, right, from Klaus's book. And let's do a little bit of a refresher here. So what does Klaus say? He says, you remember those revolutions, right? The previous revolutions in different centuries, the Industrial Revolution, et cetera. This is the final one. This is the last one. This is what Aldous Huxley talked about. He said, what does it mean to say that this is the final revolution? It means that for humanity, for mankind, humans, you're done. There's not going to be a fifth revolution. This is the last one, because this one relates to technology and technocracy and ascending to the next plane of existence. This is them. This is not me. This is them through technology. And he goes on to say, by 2050, our plan is to have this all fully in place, right? Remember, 2030 is a project date for ending private property, this kind of stuff. 2050 is the plan for the whole system to be fully in place. Now, there's a lot of infrastructure that they have to put in before they can fully roll out the whole thing. That's what they're doing right now. Great Reset is going to be rolled out through these lockdowns. That's a big part of the phase. Now, it is about Trump in part, right? So I'm not saying it's not about Trump, but this is why they had to get rid of him, get him out of the way, because he's a road bump in this overall plan for this big thing, right? And the big thing is the fourth industrial revolution. And they actuary it out in decades in 20, 30, 50, right? So as you just saw there, 2030, that's when they want to have the 8-point plan in play. 2050 is the target date for the whole thing, all of it, the whole technocratic system. And by the way, do you remember Jacques Attali? Do you remember in the previous talks I've done, we covered Jacques Attali's 2000 book, where he said, Brief History of the Future, another one of the technocratic global elitists of France. He says 2050, 2050, 2050 is the key date. So there's these key periods, these key decades, 2030, 2050. Those are the key periods when it all comes in. Now, Klaus moves on to say that to bring this in, it's going to take decades of schools re-educating children. Yes, schools, re-educate the youth. For several decades, it's going to take billions of dollars of brainwashing children in schools for them to accept the new value system. And the new value system is what I've been talking about, right? This ecosystem, this you're guilty for existing type of system. He goes on and he says that what we're going to have is a new type of blockchain. I'm not saying blockchain itself is evil, but this is Klaus's plan. It says, let's use a blockchain system to track and trace everything on the planet through Internet of Things so that we can fairly redistribute everything. That's what he says, this is everything. This is not a plan for some guy in some, villa somewhere, like a Bond villain, in the sense of like, one guy in some villa in France who wants to take over France. No, it's a planetary plan. It's the whole planet. It's the whole ecosystem. He says this new type of blockchain that we'll put in place will get rid of the idea of private property and land rights, and it will redistribute everything through global satellite tracking and tracing via the Internet of Things. He says, yes, exactly. The carbon footprint will be monitored by the same international satellite Internet of Things network. So they're going to keep up with how much water you use, how much electricity you're using, right? All it's going to be allocated, and that's why the coffin apartments fit into this, because everybody has to be off of the land, herded into a mega city, herded into a coffin apartment. If you're even allowed to live, I mean, they might even just they might just say everybody, over age 30, like in Logan's Run, oh, it's time to die. You got to float off into the incinerator when you're age 30. I mean, who knows, right? If they've done all of this, you think they're going to stop with that? No, they want, like death panels, right? Bill Gates has even said that. So Klaus goes on and he says, the way to bring this about is to get rid of the firewall of nation states that have regulations that prevent us from bringing in the full-on, yeah, there you go, Logan's Run, float away into the incinerator, right? Once you hit age 30. But by the way, they had a mythology in Logan's Run, if you recall, that it was this glorious thing to do it. It was like the high point of your life was to float up into this incinerator. Yeah, you see, oh, here's the willing sacrifices. Oh, yes, burn me up, Bill Gates. I can't wait. I can't wait to just put you in that little microwave. We're gonna float you up to the top of this incinerator, and it's gonna be glorious. You're gonna go on to a technological virtual heaven, right? So then that's what they'll tell people. They'll say, oh, if you float away and incinerate yourself, you can go into a virtual world and it'll be like heaven, and you could create your own virtual world. No, you're going to die. The plan is to get rid of you, right? But all of these willing dupes are going to believe it. Yes, they go floating away into Bill Gates's human microwave up there. But Klaus goes on to say that we got to get rid of all the nation states so that we can bring in the Internet of Things and get rid of all of these national regulations that are in the way of the Internet of Things. This is what he says. This is like chapter 7, IoT, Internet of Things. And he says that we got to have the 5G infrastructure in place so that when the 5G is in place, then we can give everybody the chips, microchips. Sounds like the apocalypse, right? You ever read the book of Revelation? Right? A chip in your hand and in your forehead, right? This kind of stuff. It sounds like that. Right? Whatever you think of the Bible, whatever you think of the end times, all that. I mean, doesn't it sound like that? And Klaus even says to live, to breathe, to move, to do economic processes, transactions, to eat, you're going to have this. And he says that part of what will be installed is a global, fully automated system with sensors everywhere, tracking, monitoring, tracing, controlling everything, all linked to 5G, all linked to satellites, and all tattling on you, policing you, bossing your bitch bots. You're going to be bitched around by little robots, and everybody's going to love it. Oh, it's so fun to have Alexa sitting there, listening to me. Ha ha, it's so cute. Oh, ask Alexa about Jesus. Ask Alexa about Buddha. Ask Alexa about butts. Ask Alexa about boobs. It's so cute and funny. No, it's not. This is your enslavement. This is the end of you. Don't you understand this? They don't give this stuff out because they're nice, because they want you to be happy. They want you to die. Right? What does Alex always say from the James Bond clip? No, Mr. Bond, I want you to die. They're saying that to you, you see. And he says, once we pass all the climate carbon regulations, once we get all this in place, Internet of Things, once we get the RNA nanotech in place, then comes the full-on robot lockdown. Skynet, Terminator. Skynet, Terminator, that's what Klaus ends the book with. I'm Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis, and this is the Alex Jones Show. Be sure and share this and get this information out.
The globalists are trying to censor what you can see and what you can share. Don't let them win. Go to our emergency election newsletter at Infowars.com/newsletter. Sign up for free and get intel they don't want you to have, and then share it. Infowars.com/newsletter. It's time to override the censors and get the truth out. DNA Force Plus, if you did one thing for your immune system, it would be get all the essential things. And that's the clean iodine X2 or X3. That's the True Selenium. That is the vitamin D3. That is the C. That is the zinc. There's 13 vitamins and minerals that are essential. Without them, you die. And studies show you really need the other ones too. But DNA Force goes beyond that. It helps get all that in the cells and out the cells with PQQ and CoQ10 of the highest quality sources with other ingredients that clean out the cells, that unclog them so all that stuff can get in. Viruses don't get in, the good stuff gets in. As the NIH website says, that if you have all the proper things, they can't replicate like they could. But I do this because it's essential, like oxygen, like water. DNA Force sold out for months, 50% off out of the gates, triple Patriot points, free shipping, InfoWarsStore.com. DNA Force election special. That's gonna have to end in a week because we got a limited supply and it was very hard to get the PQQ this time. A lot of our stuff can't get it anymore, a lot of our products, because the supply chain's broken down. That's part of the globalist plan. InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. I want to thank you all for tuning in. 2 InfoWars best-selling products are now back in stock after being sold out for months. True Selenium from the mustard seed, essential in all electrochemical activity in the cells in the body. That's every human activity. And on top of it, Body's ultimate turmeric formula with 95% curcuminoid. Leading competitors have 3 to 5%. The things that turmeric does, I don't have to tell you, this is the highest quality, the strongest you're gonna find. So both of these are amazing products, and they fund the InfoWar, which is a 360 win. On top of it, despite the fact they're in demand, they've been sold out for months, they're both 50% off, triple Patriot points, and free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com. That's True Selenium from the mustard seed. It's amazing. And on top of it, we also have Body's ultimate turmeric formula at InfoWarsStore.com. This sale will not last long. I want to thank you all for your support, but you really need to try these products. People absolutely love them because they really, really work. InfoWarsStore.com. With 2 weeks left until the historic election, we're launching the biggest sale of the year that tops some already amazing sales. It's Black Friday, comes in October special, something we did last year that was very, very popular. We did it for the whole month last year. We can only do it for 11 days till the end of the month because stocks are low in a lot of our best-selling products. But 2 things that came back in and that we're now announcing at 50% off with free shipping is Ultra 12, incredible high-quality B12. Take it under the tongue, look into how great it is for your body's defenses, your health, your stamina. That's back in stock. And Vitamin Mineral Fusion with the zinc and the other vitamins and minerals that are essential and amino acids to make sure your body uploads it better. It's back in stock at InfoWarsStore.com. Vitamin Mineral Fusion and Ultra 12, the flagship products of Black Friday comes in October sale at InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139.